Hey everybody, it's Seano McFarland. Welcome to the Seano Show. I'm your host, Seano McFarland. Today's guest is Eddie Glaeser. He's a world-class expert on family dynamics. We're going to talk about growing up in the Hells Angels, having crazy parents, love addiction, sex addiction, and all kinds of wonderful things. Please stay tuned for the Seano Show.
I was like a poor white trash kid whose mom was a tweaker, who was homeless growing up, you know? No way.
I just saw the scared little boy and I feared for your life.
I drank the beer 2-3 in the afternoon and I shut the bar down at 2 in the morning. I woke up at a buddy's house. I had blood all over me. I'd been in a fight. And then that's when I knew I had a big problem.
And what happens is we grow up and then we repeat the same patterns. And then the big line is, who's fucking taking care of me? Nobody's fucking taking care of me. And then you get pissed at the world. My guest today is Eddie Glaeser. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't we start with telling us a little bit about where you grew up?
Sure. I'm from the East Bay area, as you know, near like Berkeley and Oakland. I grew up in a town called Martinez, which is right on the waterfront. And it's a tough town. It's an old fishing town. It's a big Italian immigrant town. Joe DiMaggio's from my town, which is a pride and joy of the town. And it was tough in Martinez. There's a lot of tough kids there. I thought I was a tough kid by whatever the standards were, but I grew up tough. And I grew up in a really dysfunctional family, ravaged by addiction, ravaged by violence. Drugs tore my family apart. And, you know, ever since I can remember being a kid, I was always scared because there were scary people around. My mom dated a lot of bikers and kind of ran around with the Hells Angels. And, you know, I wanted to get away from that. You know, my out was going to school. I found a way to go to college and change my circumstances. You know, I wanted to make money. I wanted to get away from my family. I wanted to create a new identity. And, you know, I more or less did that.
Walk the listeners through, buddy, please, what it's like being a kid in that environment and what it was like for you, like an average day. Walk that, because you saw a lot of obviously bad things. You saw violence, you saw sex, you saw corrupt people.
It's really a lot of evil. You know, I was surrounded by a lot of evil, and the way it's been described to me by people who've helped me in my adult life is that I escaped a hell realm. And what it's like is it's scary. And you're constantly in a state of having your central nervous system activated. You're scared. You know, kids need to be nurtured and comforted pretty much constantly. They need to get pushed around a little bit, but they need to know in a consistent way that they're taken care of. And so for me, I never felt that reassurance. So it was always scary.
It was your job to take care of your parents. It wasn't their job. They didn't take care of you.
It was my job to take care of everybody. I had a little brother who was, you know, he had a hard time with everything. He was catatonic. You know, I had to rescue him and bring him through the blazing house. And then I had to take care of my parents. I had to take care of my parents in an emotional way, but also sort of, you know, in almost in a spousal and parental way at the same time. I was their spouse and I was their parent. Yeah.
There is what codependency is born.
Yeah, well,
because those are the relationships we mimic. And when we get older, we're going to talk more about that when we talk about any generational trauma. But God gave you a great brain and you figured out a few things. How'd you get that great brain?
Yeah, so I caught breaks in life. You know, the first break I caught in life is a genetic break. So when my parents met each other, my dad had already been married and divorced. He had 2 daughters, and he met my mom, who was much younger than him. She wanted to start a family. So my dad had a vasectomy, and he had to have it reversed, and it didn't work. So they got a sperm donor, which was very new technology at the time. I was born in 82, so 81, and you know, I say it's one of the real marvels of the world that these 2 people, my parents, figured out how to access this technology and make this happen. You know, it's that documentary should be done on that. But in any event, they did. And I was born via sperm donor. And a little while after college, I found the guy. Okay. And so my biological father is a guy named Dave Seaborg. I refer to him as Donor Dave, and he's a friend. He lives in the Bay Area. I grew up not 10 miles from where he lived my whole childhood. But the really interesting part of the story is Dave's dad is a guy named Glenn Seaborg, who's kind of a larger than life scientist. He discovered plutonium. He helped run the Manhattan Project with Oppenheimer, and had a big part in winning the war because of the weapon he helped develop. But beyond that, he was supremely accomplished. He won a Nobel Prize for restructuring the periodic table of elements. He either created or discovered 10 of the tables, or 10 of the elements on the periodic table.
Wow.
And he's the only person other than Einstein to have one named after him. It's called Seaborgium. Wow. Yeah. So I knew at a young age I was smart. And I knew that growing up, I could kind of figure things out and game things, even in school. And I didn't know why until I learned about Glenn. And what that did for me is some of the stuff we just talked about in terms of, how I grew up. I grew up with a lot of shame. I grew up with a lot of not wanting people to know we're homeless, not wanting people to see my mom, not wanting people to see the way I lived, not wanting people to see me, really. But when I learned about Glenn, it helped me start to play with this concept of rather than either or, and in both. So I'm from a lifelong addict, mentally ill, but I'm also from this guy that is an exceptional scientist. And it helps you accept both.
Walk us through your addiction history. When did it start?
For me, I'm an alcoholic more than an addict, and I say that because I feel like there is a distinction there. I like alcohol, and I really identify with, AA as it's outlined of the kind of profile of an alcoholic. It started when I was like 14 years old in my friend's church basement, who had snuck in a bottle of booze, and I took a couple shots, and I'll never forget how it enveloped me. It's warm. It's warm. It's soothing, and it took my problems away. Is incredibly effective. People listening or you or people who are in the program know that there's this concept of like fun with problems. In the beginning for me, it was fun, I guess, but it was really a nice self-medication for a kid that was wound tight, had tremendous amount of pressure put on him to perform and take care of everyone. It's a big relief, man. And, it was like my first anti-anxiety, and I thought I'm going to do this every day. I didn't do it every day, but I drank a lot through college or through high school. I drank during class. I could hide it. I was good at that. I went to college and I excelled in college. I graduated at the top of my class, studied finance. I really was a falling down drunk in college, but I still could just get through the exams. I remember professors handing me back exams saying, "You never come to class, but you do well in the exams." And
So at that time, no big consequences with your drinking.
Not a lot of consequences with my drinking, period. My consequences came, I was dating a girl and I'd stay out all night and I'd have to repair that. I never had a DUI. I didn't really mix it up with people. I didn't get in trouble. I wanted to turn off. So I didn't have a lot of opportunities to get in trouble because I'd go out to the bars and get loaded. And I drink 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cocktails. Great. But I wanted to get home and drink the way I wanted to drink alone.
Got it.
So I wasn't like out pushing the envelope, getting drugs, ending up in a situation. I'm like, let me get home and get into the wine the way I want to drink. I'm sick of like waiting for everyone to finish their drink so I can order another one. So I just drank that way by myself.
For how long? Yeah. When was your sick and tired moment?
So I drank that way throughout college. And then I broke up with that girl. I moved to Pismo Beach after college, and everyone there just drinks. And then that's when I started to have a little bit of consequence. I'd go out. There was a bar right down the street from my house, and it was just basically a mess. I was there almost every night. I remember going in, drinking all night, somehow making it home, not remembering how I got home, and then going right back in the morning and like the tab's already open.
Right.
Or the tab never closed. So you just get right back to it with the mimosas. But I remember the first time I felt like I have a serious problem was I was in Pismo. I was out drinking with some guys, and I blacked out harder than I had ever blacked out. I woke up at a buddy's house. I had blood all over me. I'd been in a fight. And then it kind of like, I like had pissed my pants. It's just not great. And I just wanted to get away. I didn't want to know what had happened. Everyone was asleep. It was like 5, 6 in the morning. My truck was at his house because we had like gone out from his house. I jumped in my truck and drove home. I got pulled over. And I put on a pair of glasses in my car, and the cop, I think, looked at me like, oh, fuck this at the end of my shift. He's like, graveyard guy. And he goes, you've been drinking, and I just look a mess. And I'm like, no, no, I hadn't. Do you know why I pulled you over? And I said, I think I have a taillight out. He's like, I pulled you over, you're swerving all over the freeway. I was like,
wow.
I didn't know. it's early and no one's on the road. I guess I just lost track. And he goes, yeah. You sure you're not hungover? You hadn't been drinking last night, And, just imagine blood everywhere, and urine. No, I went out to dinner and, and he goes, okay. He goes, well, I'm going to follow you off the freeway, and then I'm going to follow you till you get to a house, and you're going to go home and go to bed. And wow. I said, absolutely. Yes, sir. And I said, I just caught a big break. I'm going to quit drinking. And I kind of swore off alcohol. And around 30 days of doing this, I'm walking by that bar at the top of my street, and a guy I knew kind of as a drinking guy around the neighborhood, it's like 2, 3 in the afternoon. He's outside smoking a cigarette. He goes, come have a drink with me. I didn't want anyone to know that I was like flirting with sobriety.
Why didn't you want anybody to know?
I just wasn't comfortable at that time admitting I had a drinking problem. And drinking was such a big part of my identity. People like when I say there weren't a lot of consequences, I was funny. I was fun. I could have a night where I had a chip on my shoulder and it wouldn't go great, and I'd have to kind of, make things right. But, I just was a kind of a fun drunk until I got home alone. But anyway, this guy said, come have a drink with me. And he goes, well, you can have one drink. And I go, yeah, I guess I can. This is a little extreme. I've been drinking like crazy. It's just as extreme to not drink at all. Mm-hmm. I can have a beer. Mm-hmm. Right. So I go in with this guy and I have a Corona. I'll never forget. He pours me a Corona over ice. I never had a beer over ice before. And it gets kind of hot and humid in Pismo in the summer. And I go, I kind of like that. And he goes, yeah, and it's my way I drink water. So it's like having water. And I'm going, yeah, okay. And I drank the beer 2, 3 in the afternoon, and I shut the bar down at 2 in the morning. And that's when I knew I had a big problem.
Some people can have a couple drinks and then something happens. Okay. That's alcoholism, yeah, right? So, that's just straight up alcoholism.
Yeah. So alcoholism in a really straight ahead way, and the way that it affects me and the way that I understand it affects every alcoholic is there's, 3 things we're looking at. It's a mental obsession, which means when you start to drink, you obsess about having more. And that was certainly the case for me. When I'd be out at the bars, before I was going to go home and drink the way I wanted to drink or bring people home and bring the party with me, around 1:30, we're in California, cutoffs at 2. Around 1:30, I'm going, I got to get to 7-Eleven and I got to get a 36 pack, like now. And that's the mental obsession that played out for me. 2, physical allergy, meaning when a person without alcoholism has a couple drinks, they're like, oh, 2 for me is enough. I'm kind of tired. I want to go to bed. For me, 3 or 4 turns into rocket fuel, and it sparks a physical allergy, which is called the phenomenon of craving. Mm-hmm. And if you know what I'm talking about because you felt it, for me, I want to be clear. I can have a beer or 2. I can have a couple glasses of wine. I'm that guy. I can do that. But around 4 or 5, it's like jet fuel, and I'll have 30 or 40 drinks.
Got it.
And then the third thing, which I think is the most important, is it's a spiritual malady. Mm-hmm. And it's my understanding through the text and through attending meetings. I'm 16 years sober, going to thousands of meetings, working with hundreds of alcoholics, coming from alcoholism, becoming an alcoholic, working with alcoholics, that the spiritual malady really comes in the form of some type of a failing in formative years of your life where you obtain some type of a spiritual wound. And the booze or other forms of coping mechanisms, they come in to help soothe that. And so you have a spiritual injury, you have a loss of a connection with God, you envelope yourself in shame or low self-esteem, whatever. And the booze helps relieve that. Like I talked about earlier, my get down was anxiety and fear. Well, I stopped being afraid when I drink. It was nice.
And then you got sober.
And then I got sober. I got sober because I moved, I've been coming to LA a lot when I was in Pismo and partying here. And it was sloppy and it was out in Hollywood. It wasn't great. Still not a ton of consequences, but I knew I had a bad problem, and I was drinking a lot and I was sleeping through the days and I didn't like the way I felt. And when I moved to LA, I developed a older friend group, 10, 15 years older than me. They kind of took me under their wing, all cool people that were in the arts or in acting or worked kind of just, in Hollywood, art decorators, just OG kind of like Hollywood high graduates that grew up in LA, cool cats, at least for a guy like me that moved to LA and didn't know what to expect. And we played a lot of poker and we went out to a lot of dinners and they saw how I drank. And a guy who's not an alcoholic saw the way I drank and asked me, hey, you want to go to a meeting? And I'm like, no. I have a driver's license. I have a college degree. I'm not like those people.
Right. It's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
The anthem of the attic.
The anthem of the attic. I don't need that. I said, try it out. Just try it out. You'll go. You don't need to talk. You don't need to speak. Just take a look at it. And he took me, poor guy, he's not sober. He doesn't need to be. I think he looked up a meeting in the directory. There's 2,300 meetings a week in LA, right? So, it's really like a box of chocolates.
Yeah.
And, he found this meeting in West Hollywood. It was a gay meeting, candlelit. I go in, I'm mortified. I don't want to do this, And we did the meeting. I had to share a little bit. I got through it. And, he had a friend that he ran into. I don't know if they ran into each other or he had set it up for her to come. I still don't know to this day. But anyway, attractive woman.
Yes.
And we went out to dinner after. And, she's talking about AA. And she said, I'm going to go to a meeting this weekend. I'm going, I'd like to check one out, see another one. And, I started to roll with her. And she took me to meetings. She's great, became great friends. She took me to all the right meetings. Kind of I caught the tail end of really OG rock and roll, West Hollywood, LA recovery, all these great places that may or may not mean anything to the listeners, but the Roxy Room, the Key Club, the Viper Room, the Log Cabin, the West Hollywood Recovery Center, ate it up, loved it, loved a Rodeo on Friday night. And you saw rock stars, you saw Academy Award winners, you saw cats pulling up in SUVs and hopping out with it. It was just fun. And then you went out and smoked cigarettes with them.
They had something you wanted.
Yep.
What did you want?
Freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're free. These cats were free. They were clicked up, rolling around LA, living out loud, living sober, living clean.
Having fun. Right.
Going to swingers.
Right.
Taking over swingers.
Right.
Took over. Midnight takeover.
And you didn't struggle with the disease of alcoholism.
No, I didn't. I didn't. I went to that first meeting and I've never had a drink ever since. That was 16 years ago on this last April 3rd. I always say, I put a plug in the jug. And I think I read the whole book that night when I went home. And it just gave me a reference. It tracked for me. But there's something to this book. There's something to what this guy's talking about in the book. And I used to go speak a lot in the beginning. And I used to talk to groups in hospitals or institutions. And what the book taught me is I would take a piece of binder paper, like an 8x10 piece of paper, and I'd rip the tiniest corner off. And I would tell the guys these are jammed up people. These are people involuntarily hospitalized, whatever. And I would tell them the little piece of paper is alcohol and the rest of the sheet is alcoholism. Mm-hmm. And that's really been my pitch forever, which is, my alcoholism flares up almost every day. I just don't drink.
Right. So there's the old saying, the great saying, you sober up a horse thief, you still have a horse thief.
Yeah,
Even
right.
though you did not, thankfully, struggle with drinking again, now we're talking about emotional sobriety. And then you were in finance for a while. You moved into finance.
I studied finance, and I ate it up. I was good at the math. I liked the classes. I liked being in school. I liked being good at something, and I had a straight ahead goal of going to Wall Street and being a banker. And I started to make that happen. I had the right internship. Did well with that. I was working in an investment bank. They took me on, and I started to kind of figure out how to be a banker and how to put deals together and be in that environment. But two things happened that derailed that. One, the financial crisis of 2008. The firm I worked at, gone. International firm under the Citigroup umbrella, disappeared overnight, and that was shocking. To see how many big firms disappeared overnight. But I was a hustler, so I would have found my way to Goldman or Merrill or one of the other survivors. The bigger issue was I realized I didn't like the work. And I started to kind of question the track that I took as being bad judgment. Mm-hmm. Because here I went and obtained this education and started to work in this field. And I don't even like it because all I wanted to do was make money. Right? So it was almost a cliche. Which is okay because I wanted to make money. I'm still motivated by that, but it just wasn't tolerable for me. I was unemployable at a corporate level. I mean, you have a sense for me now. Can you imagine someone telling, hey, can you push these down and deliver the mail and then meet in the conference room? And, I'm not that way, and I was still an active alcoholic, thought I was smarter than everyone. It just wasn't a good fit. So what I did is I took some time off and I decided I want to help people. And the most obvious way to do that was to work in treatment. In LA, treatment mecca of the earth. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I think there was like 52 licensed treatment centers in Malibu. Wow. Now there must be more. Anyone who goes to a 12-step meeting thinks they should open a treatment center. So there must be thousands now. But in any case, at the time, there was about 50. And I just started to do what's called tech work or teching, which is kind of mindless tasks of driving the clients to Starbucks, taking them to AA meetings, just rolling around the house, making yourself available.
It required a little bit of humility.
A lot of humility.
Yeah.
Especially for someone who thought he was going to be a hot shot and knew everything. Now I'm driving an hour to Malibu to make $10 an hour and all my savings is gone. And I'm like, just making ends meet. Mm-hmm. And it's and cleaning up cigarette butts from people who are paying all this, and they're rich people, going to, just all that, and taking shit from people that are detoxing while you're driving them to treatment. And empathy, compassion, not characteristics that came natural to me. And that's where I started to develop that, because what ended up happening is I fell in love with the work. I didn't like the business of recovery. I thought it was like a little underserving and a little shady, but I did like the work with the clients. And so, I ended up starting my own thing to help people in mental health. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that took off very quickly. Hypocritically, as much as I kind of criticized people in the business of recovery in my early recovery days, I said, I can do this, after a couple of years sober. And I started a company called Evolve. And the aim was to identify treatment centers that were good and credible and did good work, and then help people find them that were compatible with what that treatment center offered. Mm-hmm. And I thought that would be really good work, because my experience was an addict or someone with a mental health issue or behavioral health issue starts to have problems, and the family gathers around the addict. All the websites look the same. And how would you know what's good? You have no way of knowing. And
a side note is that as much as I love AA and we've talked about AA, to me, the big book of AA is the magisterial text on how to, deal with alcoholism. It is. It's just, I wouldn't change one word of it. I don't dispute anything in it. It's perfect. But all the same, a big part of why people end up alcoholic or having deranged addictions, my opinion is that there's a trauma. And this gets back to the spiritual stuff. People endure a trauma or many traumas or complex traumas. They develop a coping mechanism. The coping mechanism could be alcoholism, drugs of any kind, food, porn, gambling,
nicotine,
self-injurious behavior, shopping, TikTok, right. There's various ways to cope. Then that evolves into a dysfunctional coping mechanism. That's when you get everyone's attention around you. And that's when people start to look for help. Okay. So that became kind of my working understanding of addiction. And I thought, well, we got to get at the trauma. And so what started off as this little consulting company to try and, help people find appropriate treatment very quickly turned into people saying, we want you to help us. We want you to help us find, not just a treatment center, but people who can help. So what we do now and what we have done for the last 10 years is we organize and build clinical teams around people in their home. You could call it white glove, bespoke, concierge treatment. I have no social media. I have no online presence. Everything happens by word of mouth. People either know me in the community, in the clinical community, they refer cases to me, or I've worked with families who had a good experience and they, run into another family is struggling with something and they pass my number along. And really what we do is usually work with younger men who come from extreme privilege or dynastic wealth. And we build a clinical team around them to help deal with the addiction, the behavioral health issues, or the mental health issues. Those are the things that need to be knocked out first. Very important because they're dangerous. But then we get to the real work, which is figuring out why these kids developed the addictions and the behavioral issues in the first place. And why, more importantly, as a grown adult, this is super important to me. They can't tolerate discomfort. That when I distill my work down, it gets down to educating wealthy families about how they created a situation where their son can't tolerate discomfort and more or less copes like a toddler. And I find that powerful guys who've done well, who meant well, who spoiled their kid and they turned out this way, they don't mind being talked to that way. They go, okay, I got it. Because they've been to all the treatment centers already. They've hired all the celebrity doctors who have a headshot on their, and they haven't got anywhere because all people have done is identified the obvious addiction and they have to abstain from that. Well, no shit. Right? That's like going into the ER, your arm's cut off, and the triage doctor says, well, don't use chainsaws anymore.
And you've been doing that for how long now?
About 12 years.
Right. And just because I've worked with you, there's nobody better than what you do, brother.
Thanks.
You're the best. You really are the
Thanks.
best. It's extraordinary what you do.
Thanks.
And you're flying high. You're working with the biggest people in the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And moving around the world, doing all kinds of things. You get married.
Yeah.
You have a child, Jack.
That's right.
And we're going to come back to that a little bit. And all of a sudden the world shuts down.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Let's get into that.
Started the business kind of unofficially in like 10, 11. Incorporated in 12. Was off to the races. I'm a hard worker. I like to give myself credit for the work I've done. No doubt about it. But I got lucky. I did. And I have to acknowledge that, I got, big clients out of the gate, and it just kept on going. And I was really good at what I did. I was born to do what I do.
Mm-hmm. This is a great example of taking what happened to you as a kid and not being a victim to your sad fucking story and making good out of it. You just took all that jive and made beautiful things, right?
Yeah.
Is that true, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I had a therapist like in my early sobriety who, I was struggling a lot, not with wanting to drink, but just stuff coming up. You get sober and inevitably emotions come up. And I was having a tough time. I was going through a lot, and he said, you should be thanking your mom every day. Mm-hmm. She trained you to be successful.
Yeah.
And he's not wrong. Yeah. So in any case, I went, had an amazing run, and it just went for a decade, I guess. And, I worked around a lot of really cool people, and I kind of developed a great reputation in Los Angeles, and worked adjacent to Hollywood, worked adjacent to tech, became sort of just known as a fixer. And then ultimately, somebody evidently ate a bowl of bat stew in Wuhan. Mm-hmm. Delta Airlines tweeted the other day, name a city that's changed your life. And right out of the gate, someone wrote Wuhan.
That's fucking great. Right as shit.
Loved it.
Right.
Loved it.
Good.
Wuhan changed my life, brother. My life was on a trajectory. I got married in 16. I had a kid in 18. I bought my first house and sold it and bought, my dream house in 18 or 19. It was just going the way it was supposed to go. And, I was out in the world as this avatar that I had built of a hero. I play the archetype of a hero. And in so doing that, I attracted very powerful and wealthy men mm-hmm. to retain my services as a hero archetype. And we talked about, I'm proud of the work I did. We're not always successful at it, but we're very proud of the work we did. But what I wasn't aware of unconsciously mm-hmm. is I was eating up validation from these powerful men mm-hmm. in a way that compensated for the validation I didn't get as a child. Mm-hmm. But once the rug pulled and the world shut down and all my clients were gone and my business went to zero, I was stuck with myself.
Right.
I don't recommend that. And so I was stuck in, I lived, in Topanga Canyon near Malibu, pretty isolated part of the canyon. And I was just jammed up in the house. I compartmentalized in the beginning. I built a home gym. I kind of converted to Zoom. I started a hustle, got trading stocks, passing time the way people did. Watched a ton of television. My nights and days flipped, but ultimately the 2 weeks to kill the curve turned into 4 weeks, turned into 6 weeks. The mandatory shutdowns were never ending. And I was very troubled by that. And then, there was constant protests. There was protests over the pandemic. There was protests over everything that happened with George Floyd. And LA just became a very unsafe place. And so for me, and everyone struggled in their own way with the pandemic. And I get that. But for me, what was particularly unique is that I had this childhood where the narrative or the theme was sort of, what the fuck's going on? Who's in charge? Who's going to take care of me? And I did something about that. And I sort of survived and thrived and got away from that scary circumstance. I took care of myself. But when the world shut down and Los Angeles was on fire and there was just insanity, what the fuck's going on? Who's in charge? Who's going to take care of me? Mm-hmm. And I went back to being where we started this conversation. What was it like being a kid, Eddie? What was scary? Well, I got fucking scared, man.
You got scared, really scared.
Big time.
And paranoid.
Yep.
And also, I think it's important, even though you were 16 years sober, even though to the outer world, you were very successful.
Yeah.
We talked about spiritual malady. You weren't protecting your light at that time. You were dry in many ways.
Yeah.
You're dry. Talk about being a dry drunk.
Hadn't gone to a meeting in 8 years.
Right.
So let's start there.
Yeah. We don't recommend this to people, okay?
I don't recommend it, but I feel like I should get something for it. You know, Alcoholics Anonymous is a program that provides a daily spiritual reprieve contingent on spiritual maintenance.
Right.
Did I botch that?
No, you got it right.
Okay. And I guess, cheesy version of that is you can't stay clean on yesterday's shower.
Right. We say here, the disease doesn't take a day off. You can't take it.
That's right. And it's progressive.
And it's not just about not drinking. It's about, how do I not blow my head off?
That's right.
How do I not gamble? How do I not act out? All these things. How do I remain calm? How do I not yell at my spouse?
How do I not yell at the guy on the 405? How do I not tell the barista to hurry up?
Right.
So, you know, I wasn't doing the spiritual maintenance. I was skating by on financial success and adoration. And that worked for a while until I just didn't have it. And that was taken away. You know, my friend that kind of watched me go through this joked with me, oh, you know, you lost your ice cream.
Yeah, that's great.
I lost my ice cream cone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's funny. But what's not funny is that what really happened is, you know, the little boy that is still inside me and the little child that's inside of everyone, you know, he took over, you know, and he said, I'm going to grab the wheel here. He'd been waiting patiently for like 20 years to get at me and to get me to acknowledge him, because I'd chained him up and locked him away. No one was going to know that I was like a poor white trash kid whose mom was a tweaker, who was homeless growing up, you know, no way. You know, look who I hang out with. Look who I'm around. Look where I live. Look how I look. This is how it is. This is all it is. That's all you need to know. But anyone who's grown up in abject poverty knows that the wolves of poverty are never far behind you.
Amen.
And you can't outrun them. They're always nipping at you. And you're always afraid they're going to come take your Rolex. You're always afraid they're going to find out. You're always afraid you're going to get found out. And so the pandemic was an accelerator for me to have to go and do ultimately the work that you help people with, which is, you know, why you and I became so tight and how you've helped me so much, which is I had to start finding emotional sobriety.
Right. You had some struggles with your wife at the time, right?
Yes.
You ended up living in a hotel room.
That's right.
By yourself.
That's right. I married someone who is a great girl. And like you, she's from Phoenix.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's a great mom to my boy, Jack, who's 5. But, you know, the funny thing about like psychodynamics, which we talk a lot about, is, you know, I married my mom. You know, didn't look like my mom, didn't behave like my mom. You've met her. She's perfectly sweet, nice girl. But she knew exactly how to make me feel the way my mom did, which was unseen and never validated and never appreciated. And I couldn't identify that in real time. I just got insecure and wanted to start chasing the adoration and the validation and the approval. And I thought, you know, I've always been the dog that gets the car. I'll get her to do it. I'll get her to change. And, you know, I became mad. I went mad, you know, and when I was traveling a lot for work and I was away, I could deal with it in doses because I'd be back on a plane and I'd be in New York and I'd be doing what I was doing. But when I got stuck in the house during the pandemic, it all blew up and I moved out. I got stuck in a hotel room. The world was scary to me. She was kind of fucking with me, you know, and I wasn't right. And I'd always been the guy with all the answers. So I didn't know where to go to get help. And I kind of wanted to lean into her, but couldn't. And I had a sadness that like, this is that time in midlife where it'd be nice to go home, but there ain't no home. There is no safety net. And I just spiraled into this place of no one's going to help me. I don't know how to get help. and it got dark.
Got super dark.
It got super dark.
And then you called me.
Well, I'm holed up in the hotel. I'm not really wanting to be out with people. I know about this legendary therapist on the West Side for a long time. Always wanted to meet you. And, I'm jammed up. I don't have a lot of work happening. I'm scared that I'm never going to return to work. I couldn't virtualize any of my work. It's all hands-on. It's in person. And so I'm like frantically looking for the next thing or how to reinvent myself or what to latch on to now. I just want to keep it going. And so when I met you, I mean, bro, like, you're a super impressive guy. You're super successful at what you do. And we jumped right into it. And you told me what you do. Mm-hmm. And you told me what you were working on. And, I'm like, great. I can help this guy. I can work with him. He wants to do a podcast. Like, we should co-host a podcast. We'd be perfect together. I'm just like inviting myself into your business ventures. And
30 minutes in the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess like it's your show and you ask the questions, but I guess I'm curious, looking back, what was your impression of me the first time you met me?
Well, I saw the scared little boy from the gate. That's my gift.
Yeah.
I just saw the scared little boy and I feared for your life. And I can put the pieces quickly. I could see the success. I could kind of put me because you're so good at telling me where you went from. And I knew that you were drunk in codependency. You were drunk in the tail. And I wasn't interested in working with you because you weren't sober enough. Not because I just didn't know you, but you hadn't done enough work for me to be on the frequency in which I like to be associated with people. And not in a shitty way. But here's the really interesting thing that I want to talk to listeners. It was pleasant. And we said, let's talk again. And then we talked again, but I gave it to you straight and you took it. You took it because I'm okay with telling people, hey man, this is what I see. And it's not in a shitty way, but sometimes you got to let a brother know exactly what they're up against. Okay. And they might say, fuck you. They might say, I'm not an addict. They might say, you don't get it. But you said, oh, fuck. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And you became vulnerable and you became open.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah. You called it right down the middle with me. You said, you're not out of the woods.
Right.
And
in the beginning, in relation, I always say, okay, the story about your wife, about your husband, I get it. They did this. And I hear for a little bit, I go, okay, what's your fucking part?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you don't have a part. Because what we open with, and when you come from places like you come up with, you're taking care of mom and dad, you're taking care of your brother, your needs are getting neglected. And what happens is we grow up and then we repeat the same patterns. And then the big line is, who's fucking taking care of me? Mm-hmm. Nobody's fucking taking care of me. And then you get pissed at the world. I want to help our listeners with a very powerful exercise that I gave you, that you're passing down with people, you're helping, and that I do every day.
Yeah.
So can you guys see this? Okay. All right, there we go. Okay. That's little Seano. Beautiful little Seano before I was kidnapped. And I look at this every day and I say, I love you. You're safe. You're going to do great things. No one's ever going to hurt you again. Everything's cool, man. Let's go do some good stuff. And you did that exercise.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about, and then I'll get back to you. I was asked to speak at a very tough prison. And you know that population. They don't want to hear shit. They know everything. They'll take a half an hour to get out. And these guys hadn't been out for a while. And I don't know what the fuck I'm going to say because I just know. And I'm saying my prayers out in my car, saying, God, please direct my thoughts. And as I'm getting ready to walk in, I see when I'm getting, they're going through my thing, I see a little mirror, right? And I asked the guard, I said, can I take this with me? Uh-huh. Right? And he goes, why? He goes, I'm going to do an exercise, I think. Just can I have it? And he goes, well, okay. And I walk in there and they're all looking at me like, the fuck?
Yeah.
And I do a little intro, do my thing, and no one's moving, no one's budging, right? So I go, who's the toughest guy here? Mm-hmm. who's the fucking toughest guy here, right? And they all raised. I said, okay, well, how about you come up, big motherfucker? I want you to look in this mirror. And I want you to say, I love you. The biggest, toughest guy, third one in, he's cracked. Cracked. Now we're talking. So I want to challenge everybody out there. You think you're tough. You think you want to try something beautiful. Try to look in the mirror and say, I love you 10 times and mean it. Because when I first did that, I spit at the mirror. And then I broke the mirror. And I said, fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
Now I will never, ever do that to my little boy ever again. Yeah. It's all love and kindness.
Yeah.
And you started doing that exercise.
Yeah.
Let's keep it going, brother. Then what happened?
Yeah. So it got back to, it gets back to my struggles during the pandemic and kind of like going back and kind of excavating what happened there. What happened there was that little boy who had been really through it. Hero. I had shut him down. I shut down shop. I put him away. And he found a way to get at me via the chaos of the pandemic and the chaos of the constant rioting and protesting in Los Angeles and just the lack of safety that triggered me. He got to get in there and go, okay, here we go. Now I got him. And he was going to do whatever it took to get my attention. And he took a lot from me, or I gave a lot away, or however you want to score that. But he would have gone all the way to the end. That was his opportunity, and he took it. And, I had to acknowledge him, and I had to, with the help of Tara and you, understand that a lot of the feelings I have when I'm activated and my central nervous system's activated and I'm in a rage or I'm scared or I'm having anxiety, it's him. Mm-hmm. That's what that is. Mm-hmm. If I can have any impact on the people listening to this today, it would be similar to what you said, can you look in the mirror? Well, I go a step further. Can you put a picture of yourself at the worst time of your childhood up, and can you let that kid ride shotgun? Mm-hmm. That's savage. Mm-hmm. That's gangster. Mm-hmm. That's why you cracked that cat in the joint. Mm-hmm. Because all he is a scared little boy who knows what the fuck happened and he got locked up and sitting in the shoe. And that's why I admire you so much, is you return people to their essence and you help them return to innocence.
And let's talk about where we're at. Let's talk about our path and what we've done and how you're in your body and you don't want to jump off the fucking hotel balcony. And you're actually kind to your action. We're working things out and you're a great father. And then we'll get into, Cameron.
Yeah, it's that who's taking care of me thing.
Who's taking care of me?
Yeah, you nailed that. And the anger that comes from that, my emotional sobriety is about I like to get loaded on rage, and that's where I can really blow off steam and get high on it. And then also evade sadness. That's my real get down, and, because it's sad when no one takes care of you. But who wants to say that? What guy in this world, I'm a tough guy by today's standards, whatever that means. I don't want to say that. It's easier to be angry. Fuck you, motherfucker. You're fucking looking at me and, mix it up with people. And I did that for a long time. I was a bully. But ultimately, what happened for me was I started to come here to the meetings.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the meetings, because you went to a meeting that you've never been to before.
Correct.
Let's talk about that meeting.
I brought someone here to Shell.
Right.
As a favor to a friend who's her husband, drummer in a band, running around with girls. She said, Eddie, can you help this guy? I can't deal with it anymore. Fuck, I don't want to be doing this shit, Sure. Got permission to come here. And I brought him to the meeting, which is a SLAA meeting, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. And, I just kind of got through the meeting. I'd never had a reference for SLAA. I had sent people to SLAA. I knew SLAA existed. I know there's sex addiction. I know there's love addiction. I know there's codependency. And I have a host of therapists that specialize in that. And that I had sent clients to. Hey, seems like you have a sex problem. You should talk to this person. That was my only reference for it. I came to the meeting. I couldn't deny that it was different than any other 12-step meeting I had been to. It was quite vulnerable group of men. All the same, I just didn't feel like it was for me. I brought this guy, introduced him to you. From what I understand, you never heard from him again. Felt like I did my part. The guy off, and he ran away with some girl, and that was that. But you and I stayed in touch because I wanted a relationship with you. I was like, I want to see if this guy can send me business. We can start working together. And you just kept telling me to come back to the meetings. And for someone who at the time was like 14 or 15 years sober, I found that in that SLAA meeting, I couldn't talk. And I was just, I remember in my very early days of AA being scared to share, it's just, I guess kind of comes with it. It's weird. But then you have 15 years, you talk, you speak publicly, it's no big deal. But I remember sitting in this room and being like, this motherfucker calls on me. I'm just going to say I'm here to listen. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much what I said a lot in the beginning, because I would be so emotionally activated by hearing what I was hearing, only half hearing it, because the rest of my attention was on, please God, don't call on me. And I had to figure that out.
What were you hearing?
Men being vulnerable about being scared. Mm-hmm. Men being vulnerable about the pain caused by not feeling validated. Men being vulnerable about the anger they had about not feeling appreciated, and how that cascades into acting out sexually, finding pros to go sleep with, finding other ways to get validation, and this Gordian knot of just emotional madness that only can come from a broken heart and a broken spirit and a dysfunctional roadmap fed by bad love food from the people who are supposed to take care of us and protect us and show us the North Star for a true reference for love. That's what I heard.
Yeah, right on. And then, early on, rightly so, and you got very humble and very vulnerable. And, there's so much to say here. This is a lot of people, they get sober and they realize sometimes their primary addiction was not alcohol.
Yeah.
It might be these other things. And that was the case for you. But you would, your big thing, because you're smart, you want to know why. Why did my mom do this? And I don't get into, why did this do this? Why does my wife do this? Why? And I said, we don't do the why here. The why is the why. Okay. But, here's the thing, the old saying, well, in our family, that's just the way it is,
Right.
That's their generation. That's, the fucking McFarlands, we kind of, we don't want to pay the rent. That's kind of who we are. We're Irish hooligans. Till now. It ends right now with me. It ends with, I don't care. We can't do the blame game. We got to see how it fucked us up and confused us and all this stuff. But it starts here, and it's scary.
Yeah.
It's very scary because it's to say no more.
Yeah.
Because you just get, right?
Yeah.
And you started doing that.
Yeah, I did. I want to talk a little bit about the why, because I felt gaslit by my wife. Why'd she do this, I'm a great guy. Why is she doing this? Now, does she not know? And she's just not conscious of it? So it's excusable. It's not okay, but we understand why? Or is she really fucking with me? Mm-hmm. Remember that?
Yes.
That was important to me.
Yes.
Because I just wanted to know.
But you were obsessed about it.
Obsessed, right? Obsessed. What you helped me do is understand that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it's happening and it's affecting my serenity and my emotional sobriety. So what you said earlier is a lot of people come into this program and they go, well, fuck, I don't have a coke problem. I have a sex and love problem. Well, for me, man, at 15 years sober, After I got through the jitters of being in here, I'm like, fuck, I'm a fucking love addict.
Yeah, right? On that
Yes.
guy, right? Because it's love addict. What is a love addict?
Fucking sounds
And
whack.
writing bad poems all day long. No.
It's not that.
It's when she doesn't respond, you put your fist through your fancy car out there.
Right. Dude, let me tell you, this love shit,
Yeah.
it ain't no fucking joke.
Right.
And I don't fuck around with it.
Right.
Right. Okay.
And it almost killed you.
It almost took my ass out.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I wanted to blow my fucking brains out.
Right.
I wasn't seeing my kid.
Right.
I couldn't show up for anyone.
Right.
Because I was fucking pacing around a hotel room. Like, why isn't this bitch returning my call? I'm a good guy. I take care of everything. I pay the bills. Like, return my fucking call.
Right. Literally.
Mad,
screaming.
Off the hook,
right.
Bloody knuckles on the dashboard,
right,
wanting to blow my head off.
Right. This is super important.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, she's a lovely person.
That's right.
She is.
That's right.
Clear, okay?
That's right.
But here's the thing. You should have never married her.
That's right.
And we got to that. And the reason why you should have never married her is why?
You're better at answering these questions.
Okay. No. The reason why is because you were drunk when you met her. Not drunk drinking, psychologically drunk.
Yes.
You didn't done the work to heal your trauma.
That's right.
So you picked mom.
Yeah, exactly.
And thought, right?
That's right.
That's not her fault. That's an Eddie problem.
Yeah.
That's an Eddie problem.
Yeah.
Right.
That's my part.
That's your part. And we always got to get to our part. We know, we know, but what's my part?
It's all that matters.
And when I saw your wedding picture, when you sent it to me, I started crying because you weren't even present. You were gone. And I'm not trying to be funny or smarty pants. That's not but it broke because I saw that you were in the trance. We picked the wrong partners.
Well, you met Jenna for brunch once early on. And I texted you after. I said, let's catch up. And you called me and I said, so what'd you think? And I expected you to talk about her personality or what kind of time you had with her at brunch or whatever it was. And, you cracked my heart like you've done so many times. You said, well, Eddie, there's a permanence about her sadness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
That fucked me up, man.
Mm-hmm. How?
Well, because the whole thing's so sad.
Mm-hmm.
Divorce is sad.
Mm-hmm.
Realizing you married the wrong person is sad. Realizing that you had a big part in this thing falling apart because you were asleep at the wheel, and now there's collateral damage to her, to my boy, to her family, to our friends. It all spawns out. I was asleep at the wheel. I was drunk, like you said.
Right.
And that's all that matters. What doesn't matter is the shit she did to gaslight me. What matters is I found my mom.
Right. And then just to show people what love addiction is like in real time.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a great, or codependency. It became very obvious to me that you had unrealistic demands on her. And it was just, you wanted her to be somebody. It's like you're shaking somebody. Can't you see me? Don't you?
Yeah.
And she just couldn't fit the role. And it became obvious that you needed to move on.
Yeah.
Which was really scary.
Yes.
And so I would do simple things like, just a simple thing like, let's just talk to a lawyer.
Yeah.
And it would terrify you.
Yes.
Why?
Guilt.
There you
Fear.
Go. Right.
Guilt first, then fear.
Mm-hmm.
Felt bad. I just, it's easier to avoid it and just kind of let this unusual status quo thing kind of just crawl along.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck it, I'll pay the bills. Fuck it, I'll pay the mortgage. Fuck it, she's not going to find anyone.
Right. And what was the moment when you decided, oh, fuck, I gotta start. Because it's selfish at this point to keep her engaged.
Well, when you'd been saying, why don't you just talk to a lawyer, I just see where you're at. You never pressured me, but you got to a point to where you started to have a different conversation with me about, look, if you want to free yourself up and you want to get some distance from things that disturb you and upset you, well, then you have to make some decision. You have to take control. You got to move out of the hotel. You got to start to see your son more. You have to take yourself seriously. And I just couldn't argue with that. it was inappropriate. I have my friend, or to have my son come stay in a hotel. It's not, it's dysfunctional. And so I would come to you and I'd say, I found this apartment. Should I take it? And you go, well, I don't know, buddy. How do you feel? And I'd be like, just tell me what to do. Get the apartment.
Right.
Okay, great. Hey, this is scheduled for me to see Jack. What should I do? Do this, this, and that, but ask for this. And you're telling me that. And our dear friend Tara, she's the one who, in a very direct way, got me to see things in a almost ethereal way, where she unpacked for me how the guilt I feel for the people in my life, because it's not just my ex-wife. I have survivor's guilt to my parents, to my brother, to my baby brother who's locked up, and a lot of people, my friends, people who didn't catch the breaks I caught. I live on that guilt. And she unpacked for me, you're going to feel guilty about Jenna and you're going to rob her of her experience. And are you doing her any favors by projecting onto her a lack of confidence for her to be able to take care of herself? Maybe you need to start to play with the idea of letting her fall on her face, and she'll be mad at you and she'll hate you. But in so doing that, you're going to teach her how to take care of herself. And you'll never get credit for that. And don't expect it. But you'll know that you helped her. And you want to start telling a different story, and you want to start having a different kind of power. What about your son? Well, I'm worried about him. Do you want to project worry onto your boy? Or do you want to trust that he chose you as a dad and he chose Jenna as a mom, and he's got a plan and he doesn't need your worry. He needs you to take care of him. So it's with our dear friend Tara that I started to play with these bigger concepts of really, I guess what some people might call kind of seeing through the illusion or seeing through the matrix, and really getting high level about how am I going to run things? How am I going to organize my life? Am I going to live in fear? Am I going to kind of bite at the low hanging fruit of like, fuck it, I feel guilty, I'm just going to take care of people? Or am I going to draw boundaries and help them learn how to take care of themselves? And I learned that from you. And I learned that from our friend Tara. And I learned that from just sitting in this room for 1.5 years and hearing people go through it and seeing how people fucked their lives up, or seeing how people got big wins because they drew a boundary. And I started to go, okay, no one ever taught me.
Tell the listeners the exercise I gave you for your mom to come up with. Because you were not, of course, in the beginning, your mom fucking hate her. Why is she doing this? She's hitting you up for money. You would be pissed off and rageful, screaming. A lot of voice messages, you screaming.
Yeah.
That's okay, because I said, just check in. Right? Okay. It's important people to check in no matter what. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
And then we got to a place where what happened?
With mom, we got to a place of forgiveness. And you talked to me a little bit about your parents, and I said, I don't remember exactly what it was about your dad, but I said, aren't you mad at him? Fuck him. And you're like, no, he didn't know any better. That stuck with me. That dinner at the Ivy, we talked about that. And, ultimately I asked you about, should I go see her? She allowed to be in Jack's life. She asked to be in Jack's life. I haven't seen my mom in years. She's never met my boy. And, you said, let her FaceTime with him. And I mean, the results were. And
it wasn't, just to be clear, it wasn't like, okay, that's a great idea. Like, really?
No, it wasn't.
But you trusted me.
Yeah. I didn't like it, but I always trust you. I always take everything, any counsel I get from you, I always take into consideration, and I basically, I guess, always implement. But I didn't just, go home and do it that night. I just thought a lot about it. I just really had a lot of anger and resentment towards my mom, but I also have a lot of fear about how she's going to interact with my kid, and do I want her to interact with my kid? Does she deserve to interact with my kid? Ultimately, I say, you know what? Seano said, give this a try. I'm going to give it a try. And I'll never forget, little Jack, 5 years old, you know him, just super bright kid, super emotionally intelligent. he's something else. And I said, hey, my mommy lives in Colorado, and I think she'd like to talk to you on FaceTime. Would you want to do that? Yeah. I said, okay. Well, why don't we try now? And, okay. And I'll never forget, like my mom's just like perennial fuck up. Like she missed the call and then like couldn't get FaceTime to work, and then like the Wi-Fi, and then let me go on the other. So it took like 10, 15 minutes just to like get that dialed. But once they got on the call, something that's really extraordinary about my boy is he sort of knows what's being asked of him in an intuitive way.
Because he feels safe with you.
And he just took the phone and he walked around the apartment and he sort of introduced her to the apartment. This is my train set, and this is my baseball, and this is Cameron, my fiance, has a little dog. This is Oscar. This is my room. And the way he did it was like an adult almost. It was almost like I had briefed him on like who he's dealing with, and he just knew what the exercise was.
And she loved it.
I don't like to use hyperbole or exaggerate. It made her life.
Right.
Made her life.
Right.
She has a tough fucking life.
Right. And that's what we do. We're going to love people even when they didn't love us.
Yeah.
That's what we do. Buddy, what is Shell to you?
So Shell to me is a community center hub that you've created that caters to men struggling primarily with matters of sex, love, and codependency. At the highest level. I'd say all the time, it is the most powerful 12-step meeting I've ever been to.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Shell is a place of light that popped up here in Venice, and it serves the community, and it's magical, and it's almost mythical, because it has a reputation about it. And you got to kind of figure out how to get here. It's invite only. And when you come in, what you're immersed in and what you've created is a place for men to heal their trauma. That's really, if I had to distill it down, and heal it in such a way that they can return to their essence and their innocence that they were before someone fucked them up.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, bro.
Because everyone that comes here got fucked up.
Somewhere, somehow.
And that's why I like the SLAA book. The SLAA book says, we didn't cause it. And I go through that with guys. I don't want to be like cheesy, like Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault. We didn't cause it.
Right.
I didn't cause my mom putting a pistol in her mouth and me having to rip it out and then getting my ass kicked and then having some biker, I didn't cause that.
Right.
I didn't fucking cause that. And I'm not going to let it fucking, dictate my life. For the first time in my life, and now I have two experiences of this because of my soon to be wife, but you were the first person to see me and you understood what was going on within my madness and the way my brain worked. And you just understood it. You weren't triggered by me. I was really off the hook when I met you, screaming into your phone, leaving voice notes, telling you need to call this person. It was just crazy. You have a full practice, you're running the meetings, and then you got that, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, the point is that you were there for me and you loved me and you understood what was going on with me. And I always tell you, I like to play with, words. Your name's seen. You see people.
That's sweet.
And it's like something from a script.
Yeah.
You could write that in. And you have an unusual name. And it's seen, which is the correct name for you.
Thank you, but that's sweet. Let's go through it. So you're getting through this divorce.
Yep.
You're moving. There's months where you're not horrifically triggered by her. You guys are learning how to become great united parents, right? You're doing that.
Yep.
You're minding your own business.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You're at Equinox.
And I see a girl on a treadmill.
The girl on the treadmill.
The girl on the treadmill.
Should be a song.
Yeah, it could be. She was the girl on the treadmill at 6:30 a.m. every day. And I, as you know, I'm a big runner. In the summer, I run outside. And, you know, I'm a total baby in the winter. I don't go and exercise outside. I don't jump in the ocean with you. I work out indoors. So I ride the bike. And I'd ride the bike in front of her every morning. And, you know, like, there's just something about her, you know? And I was like, not the guy that's like hitting on every girl at the gym. You know, I kind of mind my own business. I tried to say hi to her. I tried to wave at her. And she like looked up at the ceiling. Didn't want to be engaged. And then either that day or another day, she walked by me and I kind of stopped her and I just said, hey, I'm Eddie. You know, and we started to talk. And there was a rhythm and a flow to this discussion that was very, very uncommon. She got me. She got my jokes. You know, I have a sardonic kind of humor. And even at the time then, this is a year ago now, you know, I was still pretty dark. You know, so I'm dark to begin with. It's try to be funny, but it was like dark, if you remember. And she loved it. She dug it, you know. And I always tease her. I said, you know, let's go out tonight. You know, oh, I'm busy. I always still tease her and say, you really played hard to get, you know, you were busy one night. But I took her out the next night. And the date was like we'd known each other 20 years. We were best friends. Just flowed. A blast. Laughed. And we've been inseparable ever since.
Listen with this. It wasn't all smooth. And you would get jealous. And the little boy would want to come out and play. And would you get insecure? And you took all your problems in that little boy and you threw it and vomited on her.
Yeah.
And what have we learned how to change? What have we learned how to do? The most important thing that I try to teach you with her. You ask me for help first. So if somebody's jealous and they want to know who your ex is and they want to go through their phones and they want to do it because you're spinning.
Yeah.
That's what love addicts do.
Yeah. So if I had to give advice for this, when you're spun out and you want answers and you want to know what's going on and you feel like you're being lied to and you're getting jealous and you're getting insecure, it's a very simple system. And it could even be a one-part system. I call you first, great. But really what it's about is going to her and saying, babe, I'm scared. You know, I have this crazy brain and it plays tricks on me. And today it's just a louder day. I have no evidence, but it's telling me that you're going to leave me.
Right. You're going to abandon me.
You're going to abandon me because I've been abandoned. So that's what happens.
And when you do that with her, what does she do?
Shows up like a motherfucker.
And loves you the way you should be loved. Yeah.
Says everything that I need to hear. Doesn't judge me for it. Doesn't make me feel bad about it. Just meets me and shows me like, you know, that this girl really is the essence of, you know, the divine feminine. Right. She takes care of me is what she does. She understands, oh, okay, I can do this. Mm-hmm. She won't tolerate when I act out.
She checks you.
Checks. Right away, checked.
Check.
Check.
Because somebody with boundaries,
right.
Somebody that loves themselves will check you and say, that's not how I get talked to.
You're feeling
and if you
scared.
Don't change, love you, we're done.
Yeah. You're feeling scared, you want to be verbally abusive, well then I'll be out of here.
Right.
If you want to talk to me about your feelings, well then we can do that until everyone feels good.
Right. And you're going to have a baby here very soon.
And I'm going to have a baby with her on you know, the due date's July 25th.
Yo, man, I love you, Eddie.
I love you too. I mean, this is my first podcast performance. What do you think?
You look at you're asking my you don't need my validation anymore, buddy. You did great though. You were awesome. We're gonna help. This is the main thing is we want to help a lot of people.
I hope so.
Your story is gonna help a lot of people.
I hope so.
And I'm happy for you.
Well, thanks.
Godspeed, brother.
Thanks for having me on. I hope it helps people. I appreciate it.
Too.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
The Seano Show is a production of iHeart Podcasts, hosted by me, Seano McFarlane. Produced by Pod People and 28th Ave. Our lead producer is Keith Kornelek. Our executive producer is Lindsay Hoffman. Marketing lead is Ashley Weaver. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.